So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this webinar session. I'm Tony Schönenberger. I'm the Executive Chairman of STARS. STARS is a global platform for dialogue to discuss developments which will impact our society as a whole, but also our companies and organizations in the next couple of years. In this context, I'm pleased to inform you that STARS is right in the middle of preparing two symposia in Singapore and in Switzerland, and two alumni study tours to Croatia and China. Please visit our website for more information. Today, we are continuing our webinar series on the circular economy, a must for business leaders. No doubt, this topic is extremely important for our businesses, but also for the society as a whole. Today, we have the great privilege to talk to Enrica Arena. Enrica is CEO of Orange Fibre, based in Catania, Italy. Buongiorno, Enrica. Good morning.
Good morning, buongiorno. Thank you so much for inviting.
Thank you very much for joining this session. We are very much looking forward to your insights. I want to introduce you now to our moderator, Gordana Kierans. Gordana is the managing partner of her consulting company in Croatia. She is supervisory board member of Circular Economy in Holland, and she is also president of the STARS Southeast Europe Alumni Chapter. This chapter will be inaugurated in May, combined with a STARS alumni study tour to Croatia. Please visit our website for further information. Gordana designed this important series of 8 webinar sessions on sustainability and particularly on the circular economy. And she also moderates these sessions. So once more, Gordana, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Very welcome, and thank you, Tony, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are, our participants. It's a true pleasure to welcome you here to this session with Enrica Arena. And Enrica, benvenuta.
Grazie, Gordana. Thank you for having me.
Let's recap briefly this journey that the webinar series, The Circular Economy, a must for business leaders. We started in Australia originally, then we moved to India and then to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And each time we looked at different stakeholders from different perspectives. We looked at policy, at regulations, at the framework. We looked at corporates and entrepreneurs. Then last time we looked at the whole continent and its struggles on this transition to circular economy. We had a representative from African Development Bank. Today we are in southern Italy, more precisely in Sicily, in Catania. And today's view will be more an entrepreneurial one. We have a successful entrepreneur with us. So the first question, of course, is no surprise. We would like to hear about your journey, Enrica. It's a truly inspiring story of you and your sister starting Orange Fibre, something like 10 years ago. As you know, I have been following 8 years, for 8 years, your journey. So tell us about this journey. What triggered this inspiration?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we started the company back in 2014 officially, but as an informal, let's say, group of people applying to startup competition to validate the business idea. We started back in 2012. And the trigger was that my co-founder was studying fashion back in the day in Milan. And she was exposed to do research for fabrics and innovation. And also it was really a moment when sustainability was taking the first baby steps in fashion. And so the focus was very much on materials back in the day. So her idea was to do something, being both of us from Sicily. The trigger was seeing some orange groves, some orange fields where the oranges were not collected. And so some pictures on Facebook actually from friends, and thinking, okay, maybe we can find a different use for that oranges. And her idea was, how can I contribute to find a different market or find a different destination for those oranges that are not used for food consumption. And she suggested these to one of her professor, that introduced her in turn to a professor to Politecnico di Milano, who was working with innovative materials. And that's how, let's say, having this intuition in a way, but also being open to confront with professor and professional, and in a way also being in the right place, as Milano was in that moment, was really a trigger for this innovation to take the first step. Consider that this was happening in 2012, 2013. So Milan was also preparing as a city for Expo 2015, of which the focus was food and sustainability. So everybody around, the companies and the municipality, was looking for stories and examples on how food waste could be transformed in something else. So that was really the perfect moment in time to present this idea to the public and have the attention that was needed to proceed.
Mm-hmm. I'm hearing a background scratch. I'm not moving, so because I thought it was coming from me, but I don't know what it was. Okay.
Maybe it's the headphone with the jacket. Let me know if now it's any better.
Yeah, it looks like it's better now.
Okay, so maybe it was just the wrong position. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. For our audience, of course, you're invited to ask your questions as well. You know that I have the Q&A window open here in front of me, and when there is a question, I will read it to Enrica. I remember the expo. We actually worked with Bocconi that year on us. We organized a symposium at Bocconi, and then we visited. Everything was, you're right, everything was about sustainability, and that year in Milan. So for us to understand, I mean, you're going in after a big problem. It's a large industry, 1.86 trillion, 430 million people employed worldwide. And as such, of course, the industry that is making headlines with lots of problems, human rights, chemicals, and so on and so on and so on. So how is it for you to develop this material, orange fiber, and now yarns, as well as you mentioned last conversation, in an industry that is dominated by traditional textiles? I think you have slides to show us, and of course, one of the steps on this journey was a collaboration with none other than Salvatore Ferragamo. Tell us about that.
Yes, so I think that it's also very interesting how the idea and the concept of sustainability and circularity evolved over the 10 years and more than 10 years of our activity. Because as we were saying at the very beginning, sustainability for us was perceived as why we are using a byproduct. So the fact that we are using a byproduct of the food industry makes us sustainable. Whereas in the last years, we have more and more regulation, we have more and more KPIs to measure to actually claim and validate sustainability. So I think we also evolved as a company in that regard. So for us, we started, as I said, in 2012 as a project, and in 2014 we created the company, and that was the moment when we started attracting capital, angel investing mostly, and grants. And the first, let's say, big accomplishment was on the product side of things, to open our first pilot plant that in that days was able to produce 1 ton a year. And that was also the moment when we were working with Salvatore Ferragamo. So we were providing them with fabric that they would then print and transform in a capsule collection. So it was a moment when sustainability was really something that companies will do for their core belief. So it was more like a transition from corporate social responsibility to proactive sustainability or support to innovation. I think in our case, the values that were at the core of that collaboration, apart from sustainability, were really the traceability of the supply chain, the fact that it was fully made in Italy, and also the fact that the company was Italian and run by female founders. So I think the values that were more interesting for the company were this one. And then they also engaged for the collaboration a designer that was winning in the past Compasso d'Oro, who was actually designing the printing of the capsule. So the whole capsule was dedicated to the Mediterranean and let's say these storytelling about the South in a way, and its flora, but also a material that was coming from these peculiar geography. So that was, of course, for us was very incredible, because the first contact we had with Ferragamo back in the days was about curiosity of the fabric, and back in the days we had like 3. And now we have more than 90 fabrics. And they were, okay, that would be nice. Can we have like 20 meters to test and sample? And at that point, we had just 1 meter and was very hard to make it because we haven't the pilot plant ready yet. So it was really a huge and steep learning process over the course of 1 year. In general, what we are seeing now, if you have in mind Material Innovation Initiative report, unfortunately, it's a think tank that was closed last year. They mapped more than 120 innovative materials out there. And so the situation and the landscape is completely different than in the past. And we are working a lot on our strategic positioning to actually differentiate from all of the other materials out there in an industry that, as you correctly said, it's quite resistant to change. And most likely it's not because of sustainability or it's not because of quality, but we have found on the ground that the biggest resistance is really the fact that this industry, at least for Europe and Italy, relies very much on a relationship with the supplier that are at this point consolidated and easy. So for a brand, one of the big barriers to work with a new supplier is really to, let's say, switch or add to an already complex system of supply chain. So even if we overcome the, let's say, doubt on sustainability and the difference of price, there might be struggles in the supply chain to divert from one supplier to another. And that's also the reason why we recently changed, in a way, our business model. And we decided to switch to providing the yarn to textile mills instead of just selling the fabric, because we found that this is way easier for the brand to then be receptive to this innovation, because they still talk with the same agent, they still have the same contracts in place. It's just a switch in the material that doesn't add up to their paperwork or their existing bureaucracy burden, in a way.
Fascinating. Yeah, you mentioned several things that you're right. Orange fiber is not the only alternative fiber. I'm aware of fibers from pineapples, pineapple byproduct, from sugarcane. There are alternative leathers. Sometimes they call them fibers, sometimes they call them alternative leathers. So there's a lot happening. But what, if you also mentioned KPIs, so what makes your fiber or yarn different through traditional, let's say cotton? What are the benefits that brands, if you said if you're a supplier, what are the benefits of your fiber or yarn versus the traditional ones? And maybe if you have a picture of how does it look like when it's actually, I remember seeing that beautiful tie that in our last conversation.
Yes, let me, so I'll take it from here. So our main point of value is that we produce the highest quality fiber yarns and fabrics, combining innovation and sustainability. So our point of differentiation is that the material is the raw material is circular, coming from a food waste, because we start from whatever is left after orange juice production. So we are not using, different to cotton, something that is harvested just for that let's say fashion supply chain, but we take something that otherwise needs to be disposed. The second level of difference for us is that material is 100% traceable and made in Europe. So we now have a few examples of cotton plantation in Italy, also in Spain. So this is, in a way, there's a reshoring tendency in the last years. But let's say if we think about cotton, or if we think about silk, which is basically our, let's say, fiber of alternative target, like we want to substitute silk in a way, then practically nothing is produced in Europe at this point. So everything is imported either from China or India. So the first level of this is, again, being here and being in Europe and having a fully transparent supply chain. I have to say that the elephant in the room in this conversation is the fact that the problem of sustainability in fashion are not just materials, but the main problem is how the industry right now is working based on overproduction. And so overproduction relies on cheap materials, cheap labor work, very often, as you said, not correctly respecting human rights, or not correctly use chemicals. So we are aiming at producing a product that makes people go back in contact with the nature of producing something, and making something that they want to keep, they want to repair, they want to extend their life cycle. So for us, it's not just a matter of how we produce the product, but it's also a matter of trying to create more awareness for a fashion that is meant to be timeless. And that's also the reason why we are aiming at silk, because silk is normally used for accessories, like you mentioned ties, or from Marinella, or dress for occasion wear that you will use for a long time. So it's not something as a cotton t-shirt that somehow, for all the wrong reasons, we are now used to consider disposable, or something that if it's broken, we don't want to spend time and money to repair. So our point of differentiation is, of course, the short supply chain, and the fact that our raw material is a food waste from the food supply chain. But also we try to make it very transparent when it comes to who's spinning the fiber, who's weaving the fabric, who are our partners, so that people really understand all of the steps that are needed before we get to a garment. And it's fascinating, because most of the time the feedback that you have from maybe not people from the industry is like, oh, so you produce it in Sicily, and then you go, you do the raw material in Sicily, and then the product goes to Austria to make the fiber, and then it goes back to Italy. That's a lot of logistic. How is that sustainable? But then, because they don't know. So when we enter a shop and we find a garment, we have no idea of all the steps that were needed to actually have that garment there. So maybe we see the made in China there, but actually, or even made in Italy, but all that is behind that made in Italy, which is the final manufacturing of the garment, we right now have no idea of where the fibers were coming from, where the work was performed. And this is changing because of the digital product passport, for instance. And so consumers and clients will now have in their hands the tool to actually make informed choice and understand all the steps that that product, whatever that is, but fashion in particular, has made before getting to their hands.
Yeah, you mentioned an important topic. Digital product passport is in favor of your business, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Then, I mean, I hope to think so. It's, of course, every time it's a mixed feelings, because right now everybody is working on a different standard of digital product passport, different support. You can enter with your mobile, you can enter to a website and have the information. But of course, we need to focus on people being aware of what they are reading, because the risk that I see in digital product passport is that all that information and all of that certification might not have a direct value associated in the mind of the clients. Like sometimes we are from the industry and we are confused on, okay, it's better regenerative cotton or recycled cotton or organic cotton or better cotton in each. Like each product has its own set of values and pro and cons. So if we as professionals in this industry sometimes get puzzled, I cannot imagine and fathom like a normal person that is not from the industry that enters a digital product passport where they find luckily enough, a deep level of information, but maybe they are not able to associate a value to the information that they are reading. But I think it's very relevant from, again, the supply chain and the brand perspective, because they are the decision maker that at the end of the day will disclose their supply chain on the digital product passport. So they would want to look good on the digital product passport. So the first level of impact for us, it's really the transparency that will come from that instrument. And so I believe in the power to the final client, but I also believe that the more brands are looking and taking responsibility of their supply chain, the more opportunities are opening up for us.
Yeah, no, fascinating. One of the topics, of course, or one of the questions that always goes with the business is business viability. So fundamentally basic question, will you run out of raw materials? Because there's a finite, you are using a byproduct of a juice production. So is there actually a finite supply chain for you? How does that look like?
So we start from citrus fruit. So our IP covers all the citrus family. So lemons, tangerine, other than oranges. So we actually don't see that as a problem that could actually show up. Also because the quantity that is available in Italy is quite huge. But also, if we look at a world perspective, we have extended our IP in the countries where a lot of tons of these byproducts are available, with the idea of replicating the model there in time. So also serving different geographies instead of having the materials traveling around the world. So this is not really a short-term, and I wouldn't even say mid-term problem of us. What is more challenging on the business viability right now is scaling up the production capacity to get to I don't want to say price parity, but at least price comparability to what is on the market, because we are not so far from the price point of silk, but at the very same time, according to the regulation of composition, we are labeled as lyocell. And lyocell is something that is available on the market at the price that is quite lower than the price of silk. So right now, on one hand, there's the innovation, but on the other hand, there's the definition that you find on the label. And so when you are talking with a buyer from a brand, this is always coming up. It's like, okay, but if it's a lyocell, why am I paying it X time more than a normal lyocell? And you take your time to explain that, but the supply chain reality is that cellulose and lyocell in particular is normally produced on 100 ton a day production line. And imagine the economies of scale that, so if you look at our partners, Lenzing, they are amongst, I would say, maybe the most sustainable company out there in fibers operating in Austria. And everything is super certified and traced, and they are recovering the chemicals. They are also creating co-products and generating thermal energy to be used within the plant. So it's almost a self-sufficient production plant, which is possible to make and sustain if the market is buying your fiber. And that fiber has a price cost that is comparable to cotton. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we are very far from there. So we have scale from the lab, but there's no way that our production side it's comparable to that at this point. So I think for us, the market viability right now is to keep on demonstrating that the market is there after the first collection. So it's not just a capsule collection that is used for communication, but it's actually a slice of the market that we are able to maintain over time, which will attract investment. And if you have in mind Renewcell, for instance, it's a company that is based in Sweden. We have started our adventures pretty much in the same time, but they managed to raise 120 million some times ago from European Investment Bank and a few investment funds also from H&M, for instance, and the Inditex Group. And they declare bankruptcy. And then an investment fund saved them and actually acquired the company, mostly because all the business assumptions they made and on which they made the fundraising were made before COVID. And they found themselves in a very different market because the time that it takes to actually raise some money and then buy the machineries and actually make the plant working might take 2 to 3 years, if not 4. And in 4 years, we have seen in the last years so many market disruptions that that I think right now our main challenge to market viability is really finding the magic way of lowering our cost, but still keeping the production sustainable and not feeding into mass production in a way that is incrementing disposable fashion.
Yeah, this is such a complex issue. You address so many things. We are almost out of time. We have one question from the audience. You mentioned cellulose earlier. Sylvie asked, thank you, Enrica, for sharing your super inspiring story. Can you please explain what the cellulose from certified forest brings?
Yes, so cellulose is, each of us is familiar with cellulose for different reasons. Most common is paper. You can think about printing paper, but you can also thinking about disposable paper that we use every day in our kitchen or in our house. But also, if you think about cigarette tow, for instance, the filters are normally made of acetate, and also acetate is used for the frames of glasses. So sometimes also the sponges that we use for cleaning the dishes are coming from cellulose. So it's really a material that we use very much in our daily life, very often without recognizing. And when it comes to textile, it's the base material for viscose, acetate, and cupro and lyocell. So there are mostly 4 different output, and that's also that's mainly depend on the process of transformation of the cellulose, called dissolving pulp, into a new material, and the output changes as well. So the point is that cellulose normally comes from wood and forest, and it has the use of cellulose has been amongst the cause of deforestation in so many countries, Brazil being one of these, but also in Asia there's been a lot going on, not just for fashion. But if you are curious, there's an organization called Canopy, CANOPY, that focuses on alternative pulp and actually mapping the impact of extracting cellulose. And so cellulose from certified forests means that our cellulose from oranges is blended with this cellulose from certified forests, which are forests that are managed as a business. So the trees are selected to be very rich in cellulose for a very specific production process, and the trees are replanted. So it's not endangering forests that are and trees that are, let's say, natural heritage, but these are trees that are there for commercial exploitation. So they have it's really harvested just for being cut and then replanted. And the most common certification in that space is FSC, Forest Stewardship Council.
Yeah, your audience is not letting you go. There's so many topics, but I'll take one more question. Sylvia, you will have to contact Enrica via LinkedIn. Is the best, isn't it? Yeah, LinkedIn is good. So Sylvia, you'll have to contact Enrica there. I will just take one more question from Adriana. How do you secure feedstock from the food industry? Does it need new methods to stabilize this wet waste? I think you partially answered the question, but I don't know if you want to add one or two more things, and then we are out in our time.
Yeah, so we secure it working with the juice industry. So basically, we always have let's say continuous contact on that. So they have a ways to get rid of. So we place some level of order, and yes, they do stabilize it. So we during the juice and squeezing campaign, we use the wet. Whereas we also stock some dry pills for working outside the normal juice campaign. So right now, this is not a problem. Going very quickly to Sylvie's question, we use cellulose from certified forests. Actually, that's added by Lansing in Austria, mostly because the industrial cellulose is way more standardized than ours. So when it comes to lyocell, which is a process where all the ionic liquids are recycled within the circle, it's very relevant that there are not so much impurity in the cellulose. So adding a very standardized cellulose helps minimizing the issues in filtration. So that's the reason why we go with incremental steps of substituting wood cellulose with our orange cellulose.
Mm-hmm. In this direction goes actually Sylvia's question. I think you can answer that with just yes or no. Could you make fabric with cellulose only from citrus, or do you have to add wood cellulose?
We can do that. We have done it with the acetate process, and we could potentially do that with viscose process, that are a process where you need cellulose that is less standardized, but on the other hand are more, let's say, heavy on the chemical side of things.
Okay, wow, truly fascinating. Thank you so much, Enrica, for your insights, truly valuable. I think we all learned a great deal today. I wish you and your company, of course, a continued success, and I will continue cheering you on as I did in the past. So all the best to you and Orange Fibre.
Thank you so much.
To our audience, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your questions, and please join us again in 2 weeks. We are going to the north, or more precisely, we are going to Denmark, a country that is not only known for circular economy, but also for some geopolitical discussions. And we have the right person who can talk exactly about these issues. She's a former diplomat. So join us again in 2 weeks. I look forward to seeing you there, and all the best. Bye.